So, Gina Schaefer, where are you calling us from and what do you
I
do?
am in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and I'm the founder and former CEO of a chain of really cool hardware stores.
Excellent. And we're going to talk about your hardware stores. There were 13
We
by
just
the
opened
time
the
you
14th about 8 weeks ago. So, yeah,
got it. 14 hardware stores. Okay, so we're going to be, as I always do, we're going to be going forward and backward and all different directions here
perfect.
to to get your story of becoming the CEO of 13 very cool now 14 cool hardware stores. So let's go to that was 2003 that you opened the first. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
2003.
So
Yeah.
what was happening in 2003 that made you decide that yes, indeed, a hardware store is the place for me?
Well, I like to think that I was just had this amazing idea and had always wanted to own a bunch of hardware stores. But the truth is I was part of the tech bust of the late 90s and I got laid
Mm-hmm.
off for the third time. I was working at a technology company in Rockville, Maryland, which, by the way, is where we just opened our 14th store. So I feel like there's some sort of, I don't know, karma. Yeah.
Right. The circle is completed
Something.
there. Yep. Nice.
But I was working at a tech company in Rockville and I got laid off, and it was the third time. And it just so happened that I had moved to my community in Washington. It's a neighborhood called Logan Circle. And the neighborhood really desperately wanted a hardware store. And so I decided that I was done working in tech and I liked the practicality of nuts and bolts and tools, and I could help this neighborhood renovate.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you had not owned a retail store before? No.
No, I always say I'm a very good shopper, but had no retail experience, which is not true. I mean, I worked in like a mall store when I was in college, but I mean that hardly counts.
Oh, we're going to get back to those early jobs. I always ask people about their early jobs because somehow they somehow weave their way in. But you
Yes,
were working in tech, but you also were not I mean, were you a DIYer? Were you building stuff? Were you doing any of that kind of thing?
not at all. I mean, I've always been crafty, and I bought
Uh-huh.
my very first condo in Logan Circle was a little bit of a fixer-upper, but more
Uh-huh.
like cosmetic, paint, changing
Got it.
out the light switches, the faucet. Nothing real major, but things that a rookie could tackle without any problems when they have access to those hardware
Those
products. Yeah.
got it. And so now you're in a neighborhood. There's no hardware store, um, mostly because of space. Is what I'm thinking. Is because people think you need a Home Depot style seventy
Yeah.
thousand square feet flat space. And
Massive
so
with big
what
parking. The big parking lots and stuff are really key to some of those businesses. Yeah, we didn't have that kind of space in Logan Circle. It's very main. If you think of a cute little main street with old storefronts,
mhm.
we had a lot of empty buildings and a lot of surface parking lots in empty lots at the time, which started to become condos. They were taking away the surface lots and creating big high rises, and so the little storefronts were being revitalized as local street front retail, and so they were kind of
Gotcha.
perfect for our use.
Right. And so was the first thing you did look for real estate, or did you do a traditional business plan? How did you what tell me, give me some steps.
Well, so there are no hardware franchises in the United States, and a lot of people don't understand that. But if you want to open a hardware store, you either join a cooperative or you buy from a wholesaler, or maybe some combination of the two. And so at the time, there were three big cooperatives in the United States: Ace Hardware, True Value Hardware, and Do It Best. And so I was in touch first with Ace. And the new business guy that I worked with told me to find a property and then apply to be a member of the co-op. And long story short, he told me to do it backwards. He actually was terminated as a result of lying to me.
Oh,
Um, I was supposed to be approved to join the co-op before I signed a lease. And I found a
oh,
building. I signed a almost $2 million lease with a landlord who was so excited to be the guy that brought the hardware store to Logan Circle.
right.
And it was a legally binding agreement. So
Yeah.
Ace gave me permission to join the cooperative and we opened. And funny enough, I mean, in hindsight, thinking about that space,
Mhm.
I love to describe it because it was 20 feet wide, 100 feet deep. It had three levels with no elevator. So we were grandfathered in to have stairs in a retail business.
Right.
No parking, no loading, no storage. Like it was kind of a weird spot to put a hardware store,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that that makes it fun to go into a store like that too, where you're like, what happened in
Yes.
here? How'd they pull that off? And
Yes.
it probably, you and I have talked before in other seminars and things about like the built environment and streetscapes and that type of thing. It's like how cool to be able to to sort of save a storefront, but also make it this interesting, quirky business. And that's the thing I love about not just the Ace that we have around here, but even I go down to the Eastern Shore and there's one there. It's like every turn you're like, oh,
Yeah.
there's something
Yeah.
to discover, something just
They're all different.
interesting. They're all different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, the
it,
nice thing about being part of a cooperative is that I mean, we're all independent owners, so we get to put our own
right.
stamp. There's a core group of products that we really have to carry, and should
Hmm.
carry, frankly, as members of the co-op and to be a good hardware store. And then
Yeah.
beyond that, and that's only really about 6,000 square feet of merchandise. Beyond that, we get to be as unique and creative as we want with niches and product lines and community, depending on what your community wants and needs. And so that's the fun part for me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you get the space, you get approval to be one of their members, and
Yeah.
now it's time to actually build out the store, hire staff, and run a retail store. So, you did you do it alone? Did you have people? How did you make this work?
Did I
Because
have
it could
people?
be it's daunting, but also I feel like looking back now, some 20 years, you can be like, shit, I can't believe I did that.
Well, you know what I think? I can't believe I did it. And thank goodness for youth, right? I used to say I was too dumb to know what I didn't know, but I was really just really naive and so incredibly enthusiastic, which
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still a very enthusiastic person, but I
Yeah.
really appreciated that part about my personality then because I was working 16 hours a day. It was very physically demanding carrying
Hmm.
products. Like I said, we had no elevator and we had
Hmm.
thousands and thousands of pounds of things that we had to carry upstairs and unload from trucks. And so it was really daunting and it was just full speed ahead. We're going to get open because we were going to pay rent within, I don't remember what it was, Angela. Like we had
Yeah.
3 months reprieve or 6 months or something until we had to start paying rent. And I wanted the doors to be open. In fact, we started setting up the stores before we had heat and before we had lights because I was just determined to get us open so that we could start making some money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do think of that too. It's like to be sort of young and energetic and maybe slightly clueless is it's
Yes.
kind of was like the best place to be because you're like, all
Yes.
right, well, I've got to start paying rent soon, so
Let's go.
we got to do something here. Yeah. Or I think of when I work late now, which I don't do that often. I'm like, how did I do this before? How did
Like
I?
all-nighters in college or I mean, I
Yeah.
always say at 5:30, I'm useless. Don't ask me to do
Yeah.
anything. Well, I mean, we're talking at 5:30, right? But like you just hit the cutoff to when I would be
Right.
brain dead.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
used to do these at a little bit earlier too, but some people couldn't get out of work to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
I want it to be during dinner time for some people and during like wind down time. That's why I make it
Yeah.
hopefully interesting and fun and not like, hard hitting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just more of the story. Okay, so now, as you are now you're a business owner. You have a
Yep.
hardware store. What is the tell me a little about the community because I know for you and you talk a lot about community now, but what did that community mean to you as you were opening this business?
I mean, to say that it was everything would be an understatement because everyone in that community was so supportive. There weren't a lot of businesses in Logan Circle at the time, and there was a very, very strong community association that my husband and I had gotten involved with. And we would go to the association meetings, and people would just clamor for a hardware store and lots of other amenities in this community. And so that meant when things opened, the community was there. I always joke that we had a line around the block when we first opened, which Mark, my husband, reminds me is not true. But my real point is that people were coming in constantly. And not only were they coming in and spending money, they were very supportive of the fact that we didn't have a lot of hardware knowledge. We hired a lot of our first hires, and which set a trend for us,
Hmm.
were really just people who could be friendly, who were friendly, not
Yeah.
people who were retired plumbers or electricians. I didn't have those
Hmm.
people coming to ask for jobs, and so
Right.
the community was very supportive, and they were very understanding of our learning curve.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great, and I feel like it's almost like a sometimes a lost lesson in business, which is hire just really nice, kind, friendly, cool people.
Yes,
We can figure out which screwdrivers go with what,
that's
whatever.
exactly right.
You
Yeah.
know, I worked at Whole Foods for a long time pre Amazon days, and I was thinking one of my bosses always said, she's like, I don't need somebody who's, she used to use the phrase as I was born with an apple in their mouth. She's like, I just need somebody who's can be trained, but
Yeah.
also is great with customers and great with other team members and able to just connect with people. At that point, you can figure it out. In fact, it wasn't one of your ace, but the ace down on the Eastern Shore, it was funny because we needed something. It was three, myself and two friends. I had no idea because
Yeah.
this is not my area.
Uh,
My friend had a picture from her phone, and then she had the thing that we needed was to hook up the TV, and I don't even know. And the guy was so great because he was like, now I feel like there's a piece missing. He's like, because this connects to this, and that's going to have to connect somewhere. And she was like, yes, to this. And between the two of them, it was, I should have recorded it because it was a great,
yeah,
like,
it's perfect.
customer service, but also, like, he wasn't, eye rolling. He wasn't, like,
Yeah.
annoyed. He wanted to solve the problem too. And then he was like,
Yeah.
hey, if none of this works, take extras, bring back what doesn't work. It was just
So
so,
good.
like, so good. And I was like, God, this,
So good.
this would not happen in other stores. And I think that
No.
that is such a great lesson to on
Yeah.
how to hire people.
I
So
love it. One of our core values is be a good neighbor. And so when we
yeah,
interview, we try to infuse our core values into our interview questions. And that's a really good one because you may not have had job experience, but if you light up, and I've seen this happen, when you light up when we say, tell us about a time you were a good neighbor,
yeah,
that kind of personal attention to your neighbor translates to the community member being your neighbor and customer service. And so, I mean, there's lots of different ways to make it work.
yeah. Did anything from your career in technology help you, or
Yeah, in a
did you?
really weird way. So I was in it. I worked for tech companies, but the second half of my tech career, if you want to even call it that, it wasn't that many years. I was working. They called me Julie, the cruise director. My job was to build the game room and book the trips because everybody in tech was trying to spoil the heck out of their employees,
Right.
and so I had a huge budget to spoil employees then. And of course, when I opened my own brand new small business and my budget was about as big as a zero.
Right.
But I had learned a lot of lessons that, and a lot of that just sort of fed into that idea of community and making people have fun at work or, encouraging
Yeah.
them to have fun at work and create supporting environments. And so I would say that's probably my biggest takeaway from working in the tech industry. It had nothing to do with technology.
It was more about the treat, how to treat employees or how to,
Yeah.
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 That's that's awesome. Yeah, we used to do
Yeah.
a like a team member appreciation week, and it was, I think what our core value was team member happiness and excellence,
Yeah.
and I always think about that one too. So that's awesome. Now, how long before you decided time for another location?
I mean, I think it probably took 3 months before people started coming from other parts of the town asking us to open. And the thing about big cities, and you know this, is that their big cities are divided into small neighborhoods, and each
Yep.
neighborhood kind of acts like a small town. And so you don't really want to go to your other small towns to shop. You want everything to be here. And so people started coming in from all over DC. We had very few hardware stores in DC at the time, and
Yep.
asking us to open in their neighborhood. And so we were open for about a year, a little over a year, I think. Prior to the year, we had started thinking, okay, these people are asking, we should consider it. And then someone came in one day who owned a building in Glover Park, one of the other communities in DC. And he said, my building is going to be empty. My tenants are leaving. Would you be interested in looking at it? And so we opened the second location exactly 2 years to the day from the first
Oh wow.
location. And then we did one a
Wow.
year after that for 10 years. It was, I mean, we were kind of off and running, but it's super flattering when people want you to open. And because we opened, I mean, obviously there was email in 2003, but we had like literal handwritten letter writing campaigns, people mailing us letters, please come to this neighborhood, please come to my neighborhood,
Wow.
um, and email campaigns and phone calls. And so we had a lot of options.
Yeah.
We could go to various neighborhoods and figure out where we were going to fit and not fit, and yeah, who was going to support us.
Is the because sometimes people say the leap from one to two stores is huge, and that after that, not that it's not a big deal or difficult or financially challenging, but that from that moment it becomes a little bit easier. Do you find that the second one was like the oh shit?
I love this question, and no one's asked me in a long time. And I've heard that often. So I think what you're saying, there's a lot of truth to it. But for me, that first one was so damn hard that the second one felt easy. Now, I did have a teammate because we knew nothing, right? When we opened the first one,
Right.
we had absolutely, the building was weird. We had zero experience. My husband did, he joined me like 3 months later because he was going to keep his job in tech. We didn't open with enough employees. Like you name it,
Right.
we experienced the challenge. So by the time we opened the second one, a lot of those basics were covered. I did have a teammate very in a very funny way one day say, "Do you keep opening more stores to fix the mistakes from the last one?"
That's interesting.
And it's so true because every time we would
Yeah.
open a new one, we would learn new things that
Yeah.
we'd fix the screw up and something else would get messed up. And so the second one is hard if you're not prepared to be in two places at once. And I had
Right.
been warned. There were several other hardware store owners that had one store, and they said, "Oh, we've never expanded because we can't be in two places at once." And I always think, well, duh, of course you can't be in two places at once. But what they were really trying to say is they hadn't put the policies and procedures into place to be able to operate in two locations, and they didn't trust anybody. You
Yeah.
have to trust somebody to run a location while you're at the other one, or vice versa. You can't have eyes everywhere, even with cameras now. And we never wanted to
Yeah.
operate that way anyway. I think that's very creepy. We wanted to build a culture of trust and be able to expand with
Right.
managers who were going to each location and running it like it was their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that probably comes, like you said, from hiring, where you can tell people are enthusiastic, are going to be great to work with. But how do you, as like Gina yourself, how do you let go and trust people? What is there a technique you use, or is there a something that?
No, I mean, I think fortunately I'm just a very trusting person, and I've been accused of being like trusting to a fault,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to lie to you. 9 times out of 10, it's worked in my favor. And I'll give you a really poignant example. My first teammate had been in prison for 17 years, and my second one was in recovery for crystal meth addiction.
Hmm.
Nobody wanted to hire those guys. And I didn't think twice about it. And some of it was trust, some of it
Hmm.
was I believe people deserve new chances. And they never once proved me wrong.
Yeah.
And when you run a business and I mean, it doesn't matter what size you're at, you're going to make mistakes in your hiring,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not you hire someone who has a criminal record or a drug addiction. You are going to make mistakes in hiring. And when you realize that everybody can screw up, everybody has the opportunity to shine, everybody can help you build a strong culture that's trusting and transparent. You can do it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm very trusting, but we also built that into the values.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I think that's
Yeah.
great. And I think also building it into the values from the very beginning. Because I sometimes will
Yes.
see people, they'll think, well, I don't need the core values, the mission statement, all that stuff. That's like, marketing fluff or whatever. And I'm like,
Right.
no,
Right.
most of the good companies, they started there. They
Yes.
really did start there. And then they either lost it along the way or decided not to make it a priority. But when you make it a priority, people pay attention. I
They
mean,
do.
I always hate to bring up Whole Foods as an example because it is a big company, but it, we had the same thing. We would ask people about the core values in an interview and which one
Yeah.
resonates most and what, and you can
Yeah.
kind of see where people sort of gravitate and what they're interested in, and that helps them in their job at the end. So I worked with a woman who managed one of the stores in my first week, going to meet people, and we were walking down an aisle, and there was a customer who had two boxes. I think it was cereal, and she just stopped and said, "Are you having a hard time making a decision?" And the woman's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to do like low sugar, but and she said, "Buy this one. This one's on me." And she slapped a sticker on it. She said, "But come back next week and tell me about it. Tell me
Oh,
which
no.
one you like."
Great.
So but it was like that. And of course, I'm new, and I was like, "You're just giving stuff away." She said, "That's how you build trust with the customers. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trusting that you're going to come back. You're going to
Yep.
buy this one. This one's on me, and let's just talk about it next time." And she had really such loyalty in terms of employees, and customers knew who she was. And I just think again, it can be lost so
You definitely
easily.
know when you walk into a business if it has that ethos, mentality, whatever, or if it doesn't. I mean, it's always shocking to me and unfortunate the businesses that continue to grow and thrive and make tons of money despite not having that kind of
I know.
culture. We over the years, I used to joke when we were talking about, what did you know when you got started? I used to joke that at some point an adult was going to come save me. Like, where's the adult that's going to fix this problem or answer this question or tell me what to do? And
Hmm.
so we were getting ready to go from one to two, and we hired our first business coach because I
Uh-huh.
realized that I needed an adult to help us create the foundation that would allow us to grow. And part of that was documenting the core values. Who did we want to be when we grew up? And
Yeah.
then some of the policies and procedures so that the manager who went and opened that second store for us um, was tied to the first location through these pillars. And, I
Right.
don't think I realized how important that was at the time, but
Yep.
man, it helped. That's how we grew.
It really did. That's I feel like
Yeah.
that's like such a important lesson for people as they're kind of either just starting or they're in that point where they're not really sure. I mean, people come to me all the time for mostly for marketing support
Yep.
and strategy, and I'll often say marketing's not your problem. Service is your issue or your product, or
Yeah.
there's something else. There's an
Yeah.
essence here that's missing that all the marketing in the world, unless you have millions of dollars, which most
Right.
don't, isn't
Right.
gonna, isn't going to help. So
Yeah.
I often try to look at the business in that way, where it's like there's something going on here that marketing isn't going to be your solution. It's something a little bit deeper than that, and we should
Yeah.
focus there first.
I served on a corporate board for a while, a really large co-op, and one of the things that we did a bunch of research and we realized that people weren't following up to phone calls and emails. And so it didn't matter how much money we were spending to attract new customers. If we weren't answering their calls or responding to them,
Hmm.
there's such a misalignment because you have people calling you, but if you're not calling them back or what, and so all of those things were very good lessons to me with how you take care of the customers that are like the input that's coming, the
Yeah,
inbound stuff that's coming. It made a big difference, I think, in how we grew.
yeah. And so you mentioned ACE was a co-op. You mentioned co-ops, and also I've seen you talk about I don't know if do they call it ESOP, the employee
An ESOP,
stock
yep, yeah.
ownership plan. Are they the same? Are they different? Do they kind of
No,
commingle? What's
very
okay?
different. So there's a lot of co-ops nationally, cooperatives, which is a business structure. And so you think about the ones that most people have heard of, grocery co-ops, a lot of people know about grocery co-ops, housing co-ops. REI is a consumer co-op, meaning we can
Right.
join REI as a member of the co-op. Co-ops their legal requirement is or ability is to give a dividend back to their members, and they don't pay corporate taxes on the money they dividend back. So basically, if you have a big profit but you distribute it to your members, the corporation doesn't pay taxes on that profit. And so it's
Right.
kind of a win-win for everybody. ACE is a purchasing co-op, and so they buy products, warehouse them,
Got
and
it.
then they give me a discount, which is how I can compete against Home Depot and Lowe's and the online
Got it.
behemoths. So
Hmm.
that's very, very brief overview about co-ops.
Yep.
An ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan, which is an exit strategy for business owners who need a succession plan. So you've built this business, you decide you want to sell it, you don't know who to sell it to. In our case, we started doing our research. Hardware stores are very multi-generational. It's very much a family business. My husband and I didn't inherit it from family members, nor do we have kids that we can leave it to. So we really
Right.
had to think about how we were going to exit the business. And so
Yeah.
in through our research, we realized that we could sell it to the employees using this vehicle. So just to make it really confusing, we're a cooperative that formed an ESOP for transition.
Got it. That's really it's I mean, I love that you did the research to figure it out because you're like, okay, we're not going to be doing this forever,
Yep.
and how do we again stay within the values that you'd already created over all these years, and
Yeah.
that is just awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
a company of one person, I don't know who I'm handing it over to when it's done, but I
Yeah.
just love it.
There's
I
I
just love
sorry.
that. Yes, okay, go ahead.
70% of businesses don't have an exit strategy, and 90% of the business landscape in the United States is small to mid-sized businesses. And so, if people don't figure out how to save the businesses and transition them somehow, we lose all those jobs and all of
Right.
those, community resources. And so, it was really important for me to keep the businesses in the community and not sell them, to a big nameless
Yeah.
entity.
Right. And I wish more people knew about these options too, because I
Me
think
too.
sometimes when you are family owned and kind of, in it, right, all these years,
Yeah.
you're not really sure. This is how we've done it for 50, 70, 100 years. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're just like, what do we do now? And
Now what
it's,
do I do?
I hate to say it's almost too late, but it can be too late because now you haven't established this plan to hand it off
Yep.
to your employees or to somebody
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
really
people wait until they're
tough.
too, unfortunately too old, or sometimes they're sick. There's a medical
Hmm.
event that happens that requires them to make a rash decision, and then what ultimately happens is a closure. And,
Yep.
you could have 5 or 10 or 40 employees that lose their jobs, and the community loses a resource. And so it's really it's the city or town or municipality loses its tax base. And so there's a lot of devastation that can happen. I've really started talking a lot more about, even if you don't go the ESOP route, knowing what your succession plan is going to be, knowing what your business is worth, getting it ready for the sale.
Yep.
Not waiting until your shelves are dirty and your software is outdated. Keeping
Yes.
that stuff in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of business owners have a hard time because they're so in the weeds, right? And it goes back to
Yeah.
what you said. If you have to have people around you that you can trust so that you can focus on what's next or where you're heading or what the plan is.
Yeah.
And when we try to, we hear the stories all the time. They're trying to do everything alone. And it's like, that all sounds very romantic and glamorous, and it's really terrible. It's
Yes.
just terrible. It's not, it doesn't work.
Hard. It's very hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I served, this is a really good example that I had the privilege of being a part of. I served on what was essentially a temporary transition board. So it was another retail hardware chain, but Ed knew that he wanted to create a succession plan, but he wanted the adult to help him figure it out. And so he put together a group of, it was a business coach and then 4 other business owners. I was the only other one in the hardware world. They were other kinds of businesses. And he created an agenda with the business coach, and we met 6 times over 18 months. And by the end of that 18 months, he had an exit strategy. And so we held
Wow.
him accountable. We were part of his research team, if you will. But for the most
Yeah.
part, we were his accountability team, and it was so well managed. I mean, I really, really appreciated having that example.
That's amazing. And I think he
Yeah.
probably also appreciated having outside
Yeah.
brains say, okay, here's what we're seeing, or maybe you're a little blind to this,
Yeah.
what's happening over here. And that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
mean, he
Very
obviously
cool.
was very open-minded to all of that input,
Hmm.
which made the process really work. But yeah, he appreciated the perspectives, and there I remember there was so he wasn't sure if he has 2 daughters, and he wasn't sure if the daughters both wanted to be in the business or just the one that was currently working there.
Hmm.
He was afraid to ask the second one, or something like that. Point being, we said we can't have the next meeting until you have this conversation with her. This is what you should ask, and this is which is
Yeah.
kind of hard. You get into these family transition situations, and you don't want to ask those questions because you don't want to hurt someone or anger
Hmm.
someone or get the answer you don't want to hear. But
Yeah.
you can't move forward unless you have those answers.
Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
Great advice. So if you're going to be talking to somebody who's been in business, let's say it could be retail, maybe it's something else. Maybe they've been doing this 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Um, that's sometimes the part is a little bit like what do they say, a 7 year itch in a in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
relationship. It's a little bit like that time period. Do you have any advice or tips for folks who are in that spot and they're a little bit like, well, now what?
Now what? Well, I mean, I guess a couple things come to mind. I don't remember his name, but there's a TED Talk about a CEO who every 7 years took a sabbatical.
Oh,
Um, and he would close his business. He might have been in a business like yours, Angela, actually. But
hmm,
every 7 years, he would close the business for a year, and he would travel,
wow.
and it would really inspire him. And I remember thinking, wow, if I had the luxury to do that. So I don't
Yeah,
remember his name, but it's a TEDx that would be easy to find.
she'll
I would
find it.
say
Yeah.
figure out if you are in a place where you can take a significant break because we all think that we can't or we shouldn't. Mark and I started taking 3 week vacations every other
Hmm.
year after I think the third year we were open. And those
Yeah.
3 weeks were very important to us. And
Yep.
it proved the business could run without us.
Yep.
Um, and it gave us, a much needed break. So I would say figure out if there's some sort of break. The other thing too is I figure out if you want to keep running the business. Even at 7 years, you could
Yeah.
decide I want to pivot. I don't like this anymore. I need a business partner. I need to get rid of a business partner. Really thinking strategically about we after the first 5 or 6 years, I didn't do an annual strategic plan, but I think every couple years, evaluating if you like where you are, what you need, that's really important. And you can do that with an ad hoc advisory board, or gather a group of friends or a group of customers, even, and
Right.
just talk about it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's great. I think for my business for the first several years, I didn't have a strategic plan really. It was sort of like, okay, well, it's just me.
Yeah.
And then it was realizing that I also needed help, right? So I needed a virtual assistant or um,
Yep.
a bookkeeper,
Yeah.
somebody who's
Yeah.
keeping an eye on things. And I think even no matter how big or small the business is, finding those moments where you can either take those big breaks. In fact, in my corporate life, I didn't take vacations. I took long weekends, and it was somebody I worked with who he pulled me aside. He said, "You're going on a 3 week vacation. I don't care what you say. You're crabby. You're cranky." I was like, "Me? Crabby? How
Never.
dare you? How dare you?" He was totally right, because I was like
Yeah.
always in the go. And I'll tell you, from that moment, ever since then, I take 2 to 3 week vacations every year, because it's like a whole. I mean, aside from it helping with my creativity, like I see new things, and I don't have. I
Yes.
mean, I'm not traveling all over the world, at least not in the last couple of years, but you know a road trip somewhere for me, and popping into different cities, that to me is
Yes.
is is amazing, just to be able to
It's so inspiring.
explore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you run a business, it's like, see what other people are up to and what they're
Yeah.
doing, and cool ideas and interesting products and all that stuff. I love it. So I think that's
I
great.
also I've always said, and I'm sorry, I feel like I keep
That's good.
talking over you, because virtually it's always hard to sometimes hard to tell when where the line is. I've often said, as retailers, we get stuck in our four walls, and you want to think outside the box. Everyone says, think outside the box. Well, our box is literally the brick and mortar that we work in, and if we're not going outside and looking at the neighbors next to us, or going to a chamber meeting, or visiting another business when you're on a trip, you don't see outside your box. And so it's really important, I think, to have that perspective.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And I
Yeah.
think we do get into our own heads when we own a business. Like, no one else can do it. Must be
Yeah.
me. I have to be there. And it's like I'd be constantly advising clients, I'm like, you got to let that go. Or it's a good, it's staying right where it is.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
at is it, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if it's not what you're hoping for your business, then taking those little breaks, taking that just letting your brain rest a little bit
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so
You have
huge.
to. And sometimes, something could happen while you're gone, but
Yeah,
it's likely that nothing is going to go wrong, and you'll realize, as much as the
yeah,
team realizes, that it's fine if, the boss isn't there. Um, it everything, the world goes on.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does. I mean, it can't put you out of business to be gone for a few days,
No.
because that
It
then there's a
shouldn't. I
whole
mean, if
other.
not, you have bigger problems, right?
It's always what I say. Like, you got a bigger problem if you can't be gone for a
Yes.
couple of days. Much
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
So going in the Wayback Machine, as we're kind of winding this down here, where are you from again, Gina? Are you
Ohio,
from
small town in Ohio,
Ohio?
Louisville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did you have high school jobs or
I
teenager
did, and
jobs?
it's very funny. I didn't say this when I said I had the retail store, the retail job in the mall. When I was 15, I worked in the local hardware store in my town. But this is the funny part. I forgot about that experience when I applied to join ACE, because they only let the girls run the cash register. And I think I was so miffed by the time I was done with that job that I struck it from my memory. I babysat a lot. I worked at the local hardware store. I worked at the local video store. It was still pre-Blockbuster, even the local mom and pop video store. I waited tables. I loved waiting tables. So yeah, I had a lot of jobs.
I
Yeah,
could see you being a good waitress.
yeah, I loved it.
I was okay, I was not great because I couldn't remember. I'd be like, ah, shoot, what just happened?
You
Even
want to get
then, I
mine?
was like, what do they want? Which table was that? It was chaotic. But I did work in a lot of restaurants, so, and I
Yeah,
think having any of those service jobs is it teaches you so much just
yes,
about being a customer. Frankly,
yes,
I find
yes.
myself being like the nicest person in a restaurant because I just know how
You
hard
know
it
how hard it
is.
is. Yeah,
And even with I have students who I work with at a high school in Prince George's County, and it's funny because sometimes they'll say they're working on their resumes, and they'll say, "Well, I'm just a babysitter." I'm like, "You're not just. I mean, someone
yeah,
just we know is a terrible word, and also
Yes.
someone trusted you with their children, whether it's your aunt, your mom, the neighbor. Someone said,
Yeah.
"Here is the most valuable thing to me. Keep it alive for a few hours." I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a real
That's a
job, you
big
know. Like
deal.
you really,
It's like one of the most
you,
important jobs that anybody could have.
right. So I
Yeah.
mean, and honestly, I was not a babysitter growing up. So I always tell them, I'm like, listen, if you can make sure that little human is studying, whatever they need to do, eating, playing, watching TV, like
Yes.
you're in charge, and then you see their faces go, oh yeah, I am in charge of that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you
It's a
are.
big deal.
So
We
it is a big
there
deal.
there were several times where I had my cashiers go through the exercise of documenting what they could put on a resume, like if they had
Yeah.
any number of pages to write their resume. And I'm always, I mean, it always makes me feel bad when they have one or two things to write down. And then we go through the real exercise. You're counting money, you're dealing with customers, you're using full sentences, you're being polite,
Right.
you're giving directions, you're
You're
answering the phone, you're multitasking, you're cleaning,
multitasking. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
using technology. I mean, you have to use a computer.
Yep.
People don't think of
Yeah.
those things.
They really don't. It's
Yeah,
actually one of my favorite things to do is to be like, oh no, you do a lot more than that. You're
a
doing,
lot.
you know, a lot of times they'll say, well, I am in the whatever club, but all I did was make sure people, checked into the event. I'm like, well, what's more important than that?
Yeah.
It's got to
You
be
don't
a
have an
check-in
event if you
person.
don't have, yeah.
Right? So, yeah. So I love those teenage jobs. I always like to ask
Yeah.
about that because it's like
Yeah.
it comes around. It comes around. My dad was a carpenter who would always say he didn't hire women. Meanwhile, my mom was doing all his books, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
they like to say
Hmm.
that kind of stuff, but they know they need us doing all
Yeah.
the important jobs. So
All the important stuff.
all the important stuff. Okay, you also in all of this running a couple of hardware stores. You wrote a book. Tell us
Yes.
about your book.
Yeah,
Tell
so I
us
wrote a
real
book
quick.
called Recovery Hardware because we were hiring so many people in recovery. And so in 2014, one of my teammates came to me and said, hey, the community, meaning the recovery community in Logan Circle, had started calling the store, our original store, Recovery Hardware, which was, I mean, I bawled, Angela. It was the most beautiful
Yeah.
nickname we could have gotten. And people had asked
Oh,
me for years to write a book, and I always thought, no one, I used to literally say, nobody wants to read a book about a chick running a hardware store. And I said it just like that, just, which is where I get the just from.
just
Um,
right.
yeah. And I got that nickname, and I was like, you know what? Yes, they do. And they need to because we
Yeah.
hire in such interesting ways. And I have a new title now. And so I called the book Recovery Hardware.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
you are I'm gonna you're on tour. We need to get you one of those t-shirts, like rock band t-shirts of all your
Oh my God, that
speaking
would be really
engagements.
fun.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
Do it in like a cool font and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, Los Angeles, Phoenix, I don't know, making these cities
Yeah.
up.
Well,
New
this
York,
year I've
Boston.
been to Milwaukee. I had never been to Wisconsin. I've spoken in
Ooh,
Alabama. I had never been to Alabama. So I had a chance to spend some time in Birmingham. I've been to
okay.
Dallas, Vegas. I've been to, um, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting like three cities already. But anyway, I'm going to think of the rock band idea. Yeah. So I started
Right.
speaking. When I knew I was going to
Uh-huh.
step down as CEO, I also knew I wanted to ramp up public speaking. One, because I wanted to talk about hiring non-traditional. I call my teammates, a lot of my teammates, non-traditional teachers,
Yep.
building a strong culture by hiring folks in recovery and returning citizens. And then now, what it's morphed into quite a few times this year is talking about ESOPs and succession planning. So
Yeah.
I went to a professional 6 month program in public speaking and had some really great training that I needed to practice my skills, and then started doing it.
And how do you
Yeah.
like it? You
Oh my
like it?
gosh, I love it. I love it
Yeah.
so much. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I love having an audience and a platform. But I mean, I've just met so many interesting people, and I've been exposed to companies and roles that I never would have necessarily been exposed to. And so I really, really like it a lot.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
do these trips make you kind of feel like, okay, there's some really smart business people out there doing really good things in the world versus
Yes.
what we sometimes feel, which is like the weight of businesses
Yes.
on top of us. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of the organizations that I speak to are associations. And when you go to an association and you meet the business owners who are members of the association, and they're always small to mid-sized businesses, and they're
Yeah.
just, they're enthusiastic and they're doing creative things, and they're open, they're curious, they're open to, the things that I have to talk about. And so I appreciate that. And I always make sure that when I'm giving a speech anywhere or a discussion anywhere, that I talk about stories from my book, which is really stories
Hmm.
about the people that we work with and how they helped me grow the business. And so I get a chance to um, pique people's interest in hiring the justice impacted, or talk about what hiring someone from the recovery community taught me, which
Hmm.
is, moments of empathy and moments of exposure for everybody who hears me talk. And so I hope that I make a difference that way.
You do. I mean, I tell you, as we're kind of winding this chat down, I mean, you're like one of my business inspirations. Like, I'm like,
Oh, thank
Gina, she's,
you.
yeah, I mean,
Thank
it's just
you.
the way you talk about community, the way you talk about your team, and just about like the importance of being just being present with it. Like,
Yeah.
you identified an issue in your community. You were like, all right, let's see, and
We
let's
can
see
fix
what's
this.
next, and let's we can fix this. And now, 13, 14 stores and countless people that have been hired and have opportunity to grow in their lives as well, which is really, it's just awesome, super
Thank you.
inspirational. And you do it like with such like grace and such fun. Like you're a fun person. So we were saying before about interrupting, I'm like, this is kind of how we talk when we're in real life, so
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
it's
totally
perfect.
fine.
Well, I mean, I'm
It's
fortunate
perfect.
enough to have, well, so I'm not there anymore. I always talk about my
Right,
team and
right, right.
but I mean, I'm still the team owns 30%. I'm still one
Yeah,
of the majority owners. And so it is really technically still my company. But the team has always been so amazing and has done
yeah,
99% of the work. I mean, I really think that I was there to steward everyone through and to just make sure that we were going in the right direction. But
right.
I did not and never had to do the really hard day to day after the
Yeah,
first 2 years. We just
yeah.
have an incredible team that's doing that. So I
But also,
meaning
yeah.
I can be fun and lighthearted because I don't have
Right.
to do all the hard parts.
It's true. That's true. I mean, I feel like there is a challenge in being able to see beyond what your team can see, right? So, in
Yes.
their minds, it could have been like, well, we've got this one store and this is where we are, and then it's like, oh, we've got another one, and this is where we're going, and just being able to even just to communicate to them that the opening of more stores kind of benefits all of us, right? The
Yeah.
community, the employees, um, the vendors that we buy stuff from.
Yeah.
So really, and being smart about it. So it's not like you were like, I am going to take over the world, which is what a
Right.
lot of people who start a business do. You're like, I'm going to conquer each little community as I go, and
Yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. So,
It's fun. And everybody loves
congratulations.
the store. Yeah.
Everyone loves a hardware store. I'm always lost. I have no idea what I need, what I'm supposed to be looking for. I feel like I'm one of those people that like those commercials where they're like, "Yeah, my dad was a carpenter. I should be able to figure this out." No, and
No.
he loved a
Our
hardware store.
our vests
So
for years. I don't know if they still do, but the vests on the back said thingamabob, whatchamacallit, and a doohickey, I
doohickey,
think. Because people
doohickey.
would come in and they would say, I need this thingamabob to fix my whatchamacallit. And then all of a sudden, like MacGyver has to jump in and be like, I got you. And
Yeah,
it's just fun.
it is super. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I do. I love a hard. And I actually have a friend, former colleague, obsessed with hardware stores. So I'm gonna have to have her meet you one day. She
Good.
just loves
Happy
them.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations on all of it, and thank you for what you've done in DC and beyond. So appreciate it, and
Thank
we
you.
will put all these things as they say on these shows in the show notes or whatever in the caption of this when we post it. But thank you, Gina. Thank you, everyone who listened. If they need to find you, you're on the socials. You have a website. People want to book you for speaking engagements. Anything I missed?
No, I mean, I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So I'm at Gina Schaefer and I
Yes.
would be happy to make new friends or offer advice or
Yeah.
whatever. So, yeah.
Come find her, everybody. All right,
Thank you.
Gina, thank you.